The shuttle descended through the perpetual silver-gray overcast that shrouded the Olympus Mons scholastic complex, its polished hull reflecting the solemn towers of the most elite institution in the Sol system. Within, a single passenger gazed at the sprawling campus, his expression unreadable. He was the annual outlier admission, a tradition the complex upheld not from charity, but for the unspoken pleasure of watching the uncultivated fail. This year, it was him, a young man from a Titan orbital station, his education patchwork and practical, his demeanor too quiet, his clothes too simple. He was a walking potential embarrassment, and the school intended to make sure he fulfilled that potential. His arrival at the Hall of Resonance was a study in muted spectacle. Hundreds of students in crisp, color-coded uniforms representing various disciplines: theoretical physics, xenolinguistics, quantum engineering watched as he approached the central dais. The head provost, a man whose reputation was as imposing as his stature, gestured to the levitating crystal of Kyrios. It was a relic of a forgotten precursor civilization, its only known function to glow with a soft blue light when touched by individuals of verified academic pedigree. It was, in essence, a snob. It had never reacted to an outlier. "Place your hand upon the crystal," the provost intoned, a faint smile playing on his lips. "It is a formality, of course, to welcome you into our shared pursuit of knowledge." The boy nodded, stepping forward. A whisper of condescending amusement rustled through the hall. He extended a hand, calloused from manual work on the station, and laid it on the smooth, cool surface. The crystal remained inert, a dull, lifeless gray. The anticipated sigh, a collective release of confirmed superiority, swept the room. The provost's smile widened. "Do not be disheartened. The crystal's parameters are specific. Your worth is not defined by it." But the boy hadn't moved. He was staring not at the crystal, but through it, his brow slightly furrowed, as if listening to a distant tune. He applied no pressure, but his fingertips seemed to trace microscopic imperfections. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the crystal didn't just glow. It flared with a light so violently white it cast no shadows, bleaching the hall of all color. A deep, resonant hum, felt in the bones more than heard, shook the very floor. Then, as suddenly as it began, it ceased. The crystal was no longer gray. It had shifted to a perfect, mirror-like silver, reflecting 1,000 stunned faces. Silence, absolute and profound, filled the space. The provost's mouth was open, his prepared speech ash on his tongue. The crystal had never done that. According to all records, it could not do that. The incident was officially labeled an anomaly, a stochastic resonance event. Unofficially, it was a catastrophe for the school's narrative. The boy was assigned to remedial fundamentals, a class designed for the struggling, a place to quietly bury him. His assigned instructor, a man deeply resentful of the disruption, saw his mission clearly: to force the outlier to quit. The first class involved stabilizing a volatile photonic matrix, a standard first-year task. The instructor demonstrated, producing a stable, humming tube of light. The students tried, most creating sputtering shapes that collapsed. When it was the boy's turn, the instructor offered a deliberately flawed formula. The boy looked at the console, his hands moving with an unscholarly swiftness. He didn't just correct the formula. He rewrote the modulation sequence entirely. The photonic matrix he produced was not a cube. It was a perfect, intricate dodecahedron that pulsed with a steady, warm rhythm. It was, according to the textbook, a more efficient model theorized, but never reliably achieved at an introductory level. The instructor's face tightened. Showy improvisation. Without understanding the core principles, such tricks are meaningless. The boy simply nodded, letting the construct dissipate. He did not argue. This pattern repeated. In xenobiology, He identified a supposedly benign microbial sample as a predatory lithophage by observing its minute interaction with the table's composite surface, a test the scanning equipment had failed. In astronavigation, he plotted a course through a simulated nebula, not by calculating gravitational eddies, but by approximating the fluid dynamics of the dust clouds, cutting the projected time by half. His talent was not one of rote learning. It was a profound, instinctive synthesis. He saw systems where others saw subjects, connections where others saw boundaries. The pristine, partitioned knowledge of the elite school was a series of walls to him. He simply kept finding gates they didn't know existed. The school's frustration curdled into something colder. They decided to pit him against their best in the public arena of the intramural synthesis challenge. He would be given an impossible problem, and his inevitable, very public failure would finally restore the natural order. The challenge was held in the grand atrium. The problem was a brutal one. Stabilize the power core signature of a derelict Velnian scout ship, a notoriously chaotic energy system that had defied the school's senior postgraduates for years. His opponent, the top-ranked senior in quantum mechanics, was given a team and access to the main computational array. The boy was given an isolated terminal and a raw data feed. The seniors team worked frantically, modeling decay rates and running interference patterns. Their screens flickered with complex visualizations. The boy's screen showed a simple, cascading numerical stream. He watched it, motionless, for 10 long minutes as the audience grew restless. Then he began to type. Not code, not equations, but what looked like a series of rhythmic pulses, a staccato beat of commands. He was not fighting the chaos. He was harmonizing with it. The power signature on the main display, a frantic spiking wave, began to smooth. Not into a flat line, but into a coherent resonant sine wave, strong and steady. The seniors team stared, their own models failing. The provost watched, his face pale. The boy had done it. He had not just solved the problem. He had solved it in a way that made the school's exhaustive methodology look clumsy. After this, the atmosphere changed. The open contempt vanished, replaced by a wary, silent awe. Students began leaving unsolved problems outside his dormitory door. He would return them, not with the answer, but with a handwritten note pointing to a fundamental assumption they had overlooked. His insights were disarming, bypassing years of complex training to point at the simple heart of the matter. The final act was not of his making. A deep space sensor array, the school's proudest instrument, failed catastrophically. Its calibration was so entangled, its systems so interdependent, that a team of faculty could not trace the root fault. The system was cascading into permanent ruin. In desperation, the head provost himself sought out the boy. Finding him in the maintenance bay, casually repairing a faulty grav lift with a scrap of wire and a focused look. "The array," the provost said, his voice stripped of all its former condescension. "It is dying. Can you look at it?" The boy followed him to the control center, a temple of flickering red lights and despair. He did not approach the master console. He walked to a secondary terminal, one that monitored the array's structural integrity. He called up a readout of microscopic stress fractures, a dataset considered irrelevant to the calibration crisis. He studied the pattern for a full minute, then pointed to a timestamp. The initial fault was here. A micrometeoroid impact, negligible. But the vibration frequency matched the resonant frequency of the primary calibration crystal. It induced a standing wave in the crystal lattice, which slowly distorted every subsequent measurement. The systems aren't broken. They are perfectly calibrated to a flawed baseline. An engineer rushed to check. It was exactly as he said. The solution was not a complex reprogramming, but a physical replacement of a single crystal and a dampener to prevent recurrence. The array was saved. The provost looked at the boy, truly looked at him for the first time. He saw not an uncultivated rube, but a mind of a different order. The school had tried to embarrass him, to force him into a box labeled inferior. His talent, however, had other plans. It had not fought the system. It had simply rendered it irrelevant, exposing its blind spots and its fragile pride. At the graduation ceremony, the boy stood on the same dais as before. He received no special award, gave no speech. But when his name was called, the applause that came was not polite or patronizing. It was the sound of genuine respect, edged with the humility of those who have learned that the universe of knowledge is vast, and true mastery often wears an unexpected face. He left the Olympus Mons scholastic complex as quietly as he had arrived, his simple bag a little heavier with data slates, his future uncharted. The elite school had not shaped him. He had, quietly and thoroughly, reshaped their understanding of what it meant to be elite.